Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Rob and Rob.
Hey everyone, welcome to Ask Rob and Rob, the show where you give us your wonderful questions and we give you some half-decent answers in return. This week we've got two absolutely fantastic questions coming up, but before we do, let's give you a quick reminder of how you can get on the show.
Yep, there's just one place to go, which is propertyhub.net/ask. When you get there, you will find a way of leaving us a voice message for the show or a written message for the Sunday Times. But we love your voice messages most of all because we love to hear you on the show. Okay, let's have our first question from Scott.
Hi Rob and Rob, Scott from Wiltshire here, long-time listener of the show. I have a question on deposits. As rent increases occur during a tenancy, do you also ask for more deposit to then be put into the deposit protection schemes? Something I've been thinking about for a little while. Thank you very much for everything that you do. Look forward to hearing from you. Thanks, bye.
Scott, this is amazing. We're nearly 500 episodes into this show and you have come up with a question that has never been asked before, which is absolutely brilliant. That's why I love doing this. And the answer is you can, but most people don't. I never have, at least anyway. But I've had it done to me when I've been renting. So rent went up and then insult to injury, got a demand to pay more into the deposit protection service to take it up to the equivalent of 5 weeks of the new rent. Now, I believe if you want to do this with the way the deposit schemes work, it has to be an actual new tenancy agreement, which means I don't know how this is going to work when the rental reform bill comes in, but that's a whole other matter. And you need to look into the mechanics of it because I believe you may need to return the deposit and then immediately take the new one again. But you do need to look into that because, like I say, it is done, but I've never done it. The reason for doing it, of course, is that as the tenancy goes on for longer, as the rent goes up, you're going to be less protected. And so if the tenant decides to just not pay the final month's rent and go, oh, you can just keep that and take it off the deposit, then the deposit might not even cover that final month's rent. So that would be the reason for doing it. The reason against doing it, apart from the hassle, is that if you assume that the tenant does pay the rent and you're keeping the deposit purely against damage, then over time, the amount you can claim probably goes down anyway because more is going to be attributed to wear and tear than damage. So if someone's been in a property for 10 years, then you're not going to be expecting to get the property back spick and span. A lot of it is going to end up being chalked up to wear and tear. Whereas if you rent a property out for a year, you probably expect, or at least hope, to get it back pretty much in the condition that you left it in terms of walls and carpets being unmarked and so forth. So Scott, there's your answer. If it's something you're going to do get in touch with whichever scheme you use to find out how the mechanics of it work from their side. But thank you for asking an entirely original question.
Well, Rob, you're going to love this because we've got another question in that I do not think that's been asked before. And to top it off, the person asking the question is called Rob.
Ah, amazing.
Hello, Rob B. Hello, Rob D. This is Rob P. I have been investing for about 5 years now. Throughout that time, I've been listening to your content, which is amazing. So long may it continue, and many thanks for what you do. I'm calling about the interesting podcast that you put out about the monopoly strategy. Now, I've been investing in the north of England, buying some of those lower cost properties and can see the benefit of moving up the property food chain, as it were, into some more expensive properties. However, where capital appreciation has historically not been such a big consideration in some of these areas, and cash flow and yield has, how does that work within monopoly strategy? For example, if I've got three £100,000 properties that are each generating £300 per month cash flow, it seems unlikely that a single 300,000 value property is going to generate £900 and equal the cash flow, even if there are less potential tenant issues, maintenance issues, and so on to consider. How does that equate within the monopoly strategy, and how do you work around it, essentially? Thanks very much. Appreciate your answer.
Rob, thank you for your question. And it's a really good question. Now, what I do not have is your numbers. So I do not know what mortgage rate you're borrowing at. I do not know what loan to value you're operating at. And when I look at the cash flow that you're generating, I can only assume that either you've got a low loan to value or a very low mortgage rate. But let's just say that none of that matters. And let's just go like for like. Is it a fair assumption that the properties you are looking at will generate a slightly better cash flow than buying just one property for 300k? Possibly yes. I'd say that's a reasonable thing to expect. I don't think there'll be much in it. I think you'd be surprised. I don't think there'll be a huge difference. So let's say on the more expensive property, you might be getting a 6% gross yield. And maybe on those cheaper properties, you may be getting 7, 7.5. I'm talking in general terms. Of course, for both properties, you can do better and worse. But I don't think it's going to be a huge difference. Even with that said, it doesn't bother me. And I can think of a lot of reasons why, but I'll give you the three main ones. The first is you've got more properties to manage. So you are spending more time on each of those properties. So let's just say that instead of £900 a month, you were earning £750 a month off the one property. That £150 difference, how much more time are you putting in to those properties for that 150 quid? You certainly will be putting more, but at some point you've got to value your own time as well. It's not a like for like. You are doing more work. That's one of the big reasons of doing the monopoly strategy. The second is the cheaper properties I found in my portfolio tend to have more problems go wrong with them. So I actually spend more on those smaller properties than I do my more expensive properties, which sounds crazy, but it's true. And also, the profits can be wiped out quite quickly for those cheaper properties. So you might be earning that 300 quid a month per property, but if you are having to spend more on it because more damage is taking place, or a boiler goes, or a new bathroom needs installing, or whatever it may be, there's a leak, there's lots of things, and yes, you can get insurance. But my point being is, I've found personally that it's required not only more of my time, those type of properties, but also more money's needed to be put into them. And third, and I think actually possibly the most important of all, is that you're looking at it the wrong way in terms of return. So let's say you get £150 more overall from your properties. So over a year, it's £1,800 more. Not per property, just overall. So if you went to the trouble of having those 3 different properties and you didn't have the problems that I talked about, and you were earning £1,800 more per year from rent, but you're not including capital growth. And the strong chances are, that property, the more expensive property, will outperform the other in capital growth. And let's say that your properties that are 100k each grow by 2% a year, but your property that's worth £300,000 grows by 3% a year. Well, your 100k properties, so if we go 2% each, that's £6,000. But your 300k at 3% is £9,000. You're actually earning more through capital growth, or your total return then is more when you add the two together from the more expensive property. So when you put it all together, you probably have less problems, less time committed, and overall, when you look at total return, including capital growth, you're making more money as well. So for me, looking at a slight reduction of the rent you'd earn overall is the wrong way to go about it. When you look at the whole bigger picture, for me, the monopoly strategy becomes even more compelling.
Well, 2 more questions answered, and we'll be back to do it all again next Tuesday. But before then, we will see you on Thursday for the Property Podcast. Have a great week till then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.